All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a seriously eye-opening look at the actual architecture of human identity and choice. I mean, we've all had that awful sinking feeling of failure when we just can't seem to stick to our goals, right? You set a resolution, you stock up on all the healthy groceries, lay out the workout gear, and for a few days, you are literally unstoppable. But then, almost like clockwork, you hit a brick wall. So if you've ever felt like you're just constantly battling yourself to make the right decisions, and let's be honest, losing that battle way more often than you'd like to admit, you're going to find today's breakdown absolutely fascinating. We're pulling from some incredible source material that argues traditional willpower is actually biologically destined to fail. No joke. We're going to unpack exactly why that is, and way more importantly, what actually works. Let's get into it.
So picture this. We've all been there. It's late in the afternoon, or maybe right after a super long, incredibly stressful day at the office. You're just standing there in your kitchen, totally exhausted, and you find yourself asking, why on earth is it so incredibly hard to resist that hyper-palatable sugar hit? It's this universal, everyday struggle. You genuinely want to make good choices, you've set those lofty health goals, but you're fighting these insanely powerful, almost magnetic cravings. It's like that glazed donut is literally communicating with you telepathically from across the room. And it feels like a massive character flaw when you inevitably give in, doesn't it? You think, man, if I just had a little more discipline, I wouldn't be eating this. But, as we'll see, it is absolutely not a moral failing. It's actually just biology.
Which brings us to Section 1, the willpower problem. Or, as we're calling it, the flawed strategy of manual override.
See, for decades, we've been sold this flawed strategy of manual override. We've been told that if we just push harder, just grit our teeth and white-knuckle our way through the cravings, we can finally overcome our bad habits. But we really need to completely redefine our understanding of self-control here. We've got to shift our perspective away from guilt and look straight at the biology. Willpower is not a measure of your moral strength. It isn't some abstract virtue that you're either blessed with or you aren't. According to the source material, willpower is actually a finite, highly depletable biochemical resource. Honestly, think of it exactly like the battery in your smartphone. You wake up after a solid night's sleep, and boom, that battery is sitting at 100%. You feel great, you eat a healthy breakfast, you easily pass on the office donuts. But here's the catch. Every single time you use that willpower, every time you force a decision or resist a temptation, that battery drains just a little bit more. By the evening, you're running on like 1%, and the low battery warning is practically flashing red in your head.
So, let's move to Section 2, the cost of friction. This is all about the biology of daily survival drag.
If willpower is a battery, we really have to look at what's draining it so incredibly fast in our day-to-day lives. This is where the literal physical toll of decision-making comes into play. Because when you resist a temptation, you aren't just having some quiet philosophical mental debate, you are engaging in a heavy biological process. And that process costs glucose from your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for complex planning and decision-making. Your brain is quite literally burning chemical fuel to stop you from doing what you naturally want to do. But here's the really massive problem. You are also burning that exact same precious glucose, navigating bumper-to-bumper traffic, carefully wording a touchy email to your boss, or just, managing the everyday chaos of your schedule. The source material actually calls this daily survival drag. You are spending your brain's glucose just surviving the day. And the exact moment your cognitive load is exhausted by this daily survival drag, that manual override completely fails. Your brain simply runs out of the fuel required to put up a fight, and you immediately default to your baseline code.
So what does that baseline code actually look like in action? Well, picture yourself standing in the kitchen at 8 p.m., just staring blankly into the hypnotic glow of the refrigerator light. We've all done it. If you're relying purely on willpower to keep you from grabbing a snack right then, there is massive internal friction going on. Your internal software is absolutely screaming, I want the hyper-palatable sugar hit. Your baseline programming is basically demanding a specific, comforting action. And because your prefrontal cortex is already completely fried from the day's survival drag, the stressful emails, the bad traffic, the back-to-back meetings, your willpower battery is dead. It has absolutely no chance of successfully overriding that powerful internal command.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, the primacy of thinking. This is where we start flipping the script on behavior.
So how on earth do we escape this exhausting biological trap? Well, here is the massive paradigm shift. Our thinking comes before our behavior and the choices we make. Now, this realization is super profound because it reveals exactly why we get this wrong so often. We have basically been attacking the problem at entirely the wrong stage of the process. Just think about it.
We spend all of our energy trying to force a change in our behavior in the heat of the moment, right? Desperately trying not to eat the sugar or trying to force ourselves to get off the couch and hit the gym. We treat the behavior as the starting line. But actually, behavior is just the end result of a much deeper, entirely internal process.
There is this strict, linear chain reaction that dictates every single choice you make. Step 1 is the thought. Step 2 is the feeling. And step 3 is the behavior, or the decision. Let's look at a really concrete example. Say you have the thought, man, I had a terrible, stressful day and I deserve a reward. That thought immediately triggers a feeling of intense craving, of seeking comfort. And then that feeling inevitably creates the behavior, grabbing a pint of ice cream. Decision-making is simply the unavoidable result of how we think, which dictates how we feel in that exact split second. The behavior is really just the caboose at the end of a moving train. It merely follows wherever the engine leads. So, if you're out there trying to change the behavior without ever addressing the initial thought that sparked the feeling, you're going to be relying on that highly depletable willpower we talked about earlier. You're literally fighting against the momentum of your own moving train.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, rewiring your baseline code, automating your reality. Listen, if willpower is a failing strategy, we have to remove that internal friction entirely. And to do that, we have to address your baseline code, which is also known as the core node. This is the deep foundational identity of who you fundamentally believe you are. It's the very first domino in that chain reaction we just unpacked, and it goes incredibly deep into our psychology. The source material puts it perfectly. We are what we eat, but more importantly, we are what we think. We act in accordance with who we believe we are. So if you really want to stop that exhausting daily battle of willpower, you cannot just try to slap better habits on top of a conflicting identity. No way. You must fundamentally rewrite this foundational belief right at the core node.
Just think about the sheer friction of a person struggling to lift this massive weight of forced healthy choices. If you internally identify as a lazy person trying to get fit or a junk food lover trying to eat clean, every single healthy decision you try to make is going to require a massive expenditure of brain glucose. You are in a constant, agonizing fight with your own identity. But contrast that with the effortless motion of someone whose habits actually align with their self-image. If you internally think to yourself, I am a health-conscious person, then you naturally feel and behave like a healthy person. If you genuinely think, I am a responsible person, then you automatically behave like someone who takes accountability for their decisions. All that exhausting biological friction, it just completely disappears.
So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. When you successfully change that core node, the benefits are just incredibly liberating. It completely removes the internal friction. Decision-making stops being this grinding battle of attrition. You gain this natural, easy accountability. And most importantly, making a healthy choice is no longer a manual override of your system. It becomes a simple, automated confirmation of reality. Just imagine what a day looks like when you don't actually have to fight yourself. Passing up the junk food doesn't feel like some agonizing restriction. It just feels natural. You aren't forcing yourself to be healthy. You're just acting in accordance with who you already are. The behavior effortlessly takes care of itself. It's a real game changer. Which leaves us with this final, lingering question for you to deeply consider today. What baseline code are you choosing to automate your reality? Are you still holding on to an outdated identity that is secretly draining your prefrontal cortex? Are you finally ready to rewrite your core node and let your thoughts effortlessly shape your choices? Take a really careful look at your own internal labels today. It might just change everything. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found this as insightful as I did.